Hi everyone. Today we are going through 2020 Post-Bacc H2 Econs Paper 2, and in this video we are looking at question 1a. Just a heads up, what I'll be doing is breaking down the question only and common things that we look out for when we do similar questions. If you need to find how the content is being detailed and written down, okay, you may always access the answers at a later time. So let's start with 1a. Explain the possible reasons for the plunge in the price of crude oil. So when we see a question like that, it's quite obvious that to determine the price of crude oil, we are looking at one particular market. Therefore, when there is a change in price, in this case, a plunge refers to a very sharp decrease, not only a decrease, so there might be something related to the extent of the decrease. So when we talk about a price of a particular market, it is quite obvious that the only topic which is most related to this is demand and supply. So it says here, explain the possible reasons. Right? So if we know that we have to use demand and supply as the main concept, then the possible reasons that we want to give in our answer would either explain that there is a fall in demand or an increase in supply, right? And it will be good to at least find 1 to 2 reasons for either demand and supply factor, right? So we should find one reason each, right? That's because we want to display our understanding of demand and supply that affects the price of crude oil, and it can be affected by 2 ways. So we want to choose points which help us explain a demand factor and a supply factor. With regards to the word sharp decrease, right? So it talks about the extent of the increase or decrease. For similar questions, they will sometimes they just tell you there is a sharp change in price, right? And explain what happened. We usually try to display our knowledge of elasticity concepts, right? And in this case, right, to talk about the extent of the decrease, we can either talk about PED or PES concepts, right, to help elaborate on the extent of the change in price. In this case, we want to say the sharp decrease. So what could be some possible reasons that cause the price of crude oil in the recent years to decrease, right? So fall in demand, right? Firstly, you want to show the examiner the understanding that the fall in demand of oil is usually oil as a derived demand. So what we know that has been happening in the world recently is that there is a fall in economic activity, right? And this fall in economic activity could relate to things like reduced travel due to COVID-19 and the pandemic where restrictions are imposed. It could also be related to a decrease in consumption of products that use oil as a factor of production. And that's quite easy to link because oil is practically used to produce energy for many different industries, right? So we are going to link these 2 reasons to the fall in demand. And they're both related to the fall in economic activity, probably because of the pandemic. And then we also would want to try and find a reason related to supply, right? And in recent years, if you have been reading, right, there have been an increase in oil production by OPEC and Russia, right? And that was announced in the recent years in order to try to capture the market share. This is one of the strategies that the OPEC and the Russian economy has been doing, right? Increasing the oil production and causing the price of crude oil to decrease. So that's it, right? We have 1 to 2 demand factors, 1 supply factor, and what's next, right? We can show the extent of the decrease. So when there is a change in the supply, right, we could look at PED. So in this case, we can argue that the demand for oil is price inelastic, right? And you have to give a reason in your answer, right? And the reason which you need to elaborate on is that it is a necessity, right? Because it's an important resource to produce energy, and this is used in practically almost every industry. Therefore, demand tends to be price inelastic. We can also talk about PS, right? When there is an increase in, or in this case, a fall in demand, how does the PS affect the extent of the increase in price? So we can argue that the supply is price inelastic because in this industry it takes a lot of time, money, and effort for the extraction process, right? So supply takes a longer time to respond to the change in price. So in summary, to answer this question is quite simple. We identified that it's a demand and supply topic. And when we have determined that as a topic, we should always try to look for different factors that can help us explain changes in demand and changes in supply. And to talk about the extent, we can use elasticity concepts. And we try to use the most relevant one. And in this case, PED and PS concepts to talk about the extent of change when supply and demand change respectively. In other cases, right, you can talk about YED if the question relates to a change in income, right? And we can talk about XED, right, if the question talks about related markets like substitutes and complements. So the key thing to remember is that for demand and supply questions where you have to talk about changes in the market, try your best to look for demand factors, supply factors, followed by different elasticity concepts, the ones which are most related to explain the extent of the change in the price or quantity. So in summary, what would be an appropriate structure for this essay? But I don't think I need to spend so much time on this. It's quite straightforward. We usually start with the introduction. We give the overview of the approach that we're using. We define whatever key concepts that are needed to show our understanding about the concept that we're using. And then after that, we'll introduce the demand factor, or a better word, not only introduce, but to explain the demand factor that either cause an increase or decrease in price, right? And then we try to support it by PES, right? To talk about extent. So use words like the change in quantity demanded is more or less than proportionate, right, in your explanation. And then in our second paragraph, we try to bring in a supply factor, right? Because if you only bring all demand factors, then you can be marked down for not enough breadth in your reasons, right? And then we will use PED in this question to talk about the extent when there is a change in the supply factor, right? And lastly, we always try to do the combined effect at the end. And remember that we should have our price adjustment process, right? At current price, quantity demanded, and relative to quantity supply, would there be a surplus or shortage leading to price pressure upwards or downwards, right? And the end of the day, supporting all this is the graph to aid your explanation. So whatever demand or supply question, I mean, whatever market that you're being asked, right, the skills that you want to display are similar, right? More importantly, how do you tailor your points to suit the context? Okay, that's all for question 1A. And for more details on how it can be written in prose, please look at the answer guide. Thank you.